Nurse Rob here at the RN Fall Assembly, and I'm with Una Ferguson. Una, what interest group are you chair of?
I'm chair of the Retired Nurses Interest Group.
And retired nurses, what can we learn from retired nurses?
I think you can learn a lot from retired nurses. Our motto is wisdom and resilience is the retired RN. And I think we have a lot of wisdom from our past nursing lives to give to younger nurses today.
When did you graduate nursing?
I graduated in 1968.
And when did you last practice nursing in person, clinically?
In 2000.
So you came back and you were part of the COVID response.
No, I didn't actually come back to the COVID response. I was in the COVID response. I actually had to quit nursing because of a physical problem.
Well, that's amazing. So that's a lot of years in nursing. So you've seen how nursing has evolved over the decades.
I certainly have.
Now, I'm chairing the Ontario Nurses for the Environment, and one of the things that we see is there's lots of waste in nursing.
I've maintained that for years. When I graduated, of course, it was a very different era in nursing. For one thing, there was nothing plastic. There was nothing disposable. You had no gloves other than for sterile procedures. And we seemed to manage, and we didn't have the infections.
So you didn't, there's a big worry about infection control. Was that managed?
Well, we never had, big infections. We washed our hands often.
Okay.
And basically that's what you used, was we washed our hands. We washed everybody's bedding, well, not the bedding, but the actual bed that they slept in was all carbolized and everything by nurses.
Okay.
All the equipment in the room was done by nurses.
So one thing that we have lots of auto injectors for blood thinners and other things. How did you manage that back then?
I don't think we ever used an auto injector ever. We would use needles and syringes. The syringes were glass. They were washable. That was part of the nurse's duty after the shift, was to wash up the syringes. The needles were steel. They had to be sharpened. We had to test for sharpness and for burrs and whatnot and put them through gauze at the end of each shift, all the needles we had used.
Isn't that dirty though?
Didn't think. They let us do it. We washed them.
And they sterilized them.
And they sterilized them. They went down to the CSR, which was a separate unit in the hospital. It was just like dressing trays. Dressing trays were reusable.
Well, when I do lots of dressing changes. I do wound care a lot. And so much is thrown out.
That annoys me because you might only use one or two items in the kit and it all gets thrown out. And that's just an environmental disaster. In our day, you obviously had to have the staff for the CSR, but the trays were usually on metal trays. The equipment was put onto I guess it was a cloth type thing that was washable.
Yeah.
And basically you laid all the instruments in there. They folded it up. You had a certain way to fold it up, and you sent it down to the CSR. You could not use it unless the CSR had their tape across and it had the certain stripes that gave you the indication that it had been sterilized and whatnot. If it was contaminated, for instance, you got blood all over the cloth and that type of thing, then you sort of rinse the cloth and then sent it down to CSR, and they would determine whether it could be used again or if it could be sterilized or used for something else.
So basically, single-use stuff didn't exist. Everything was almost reusable.
Yeah. There were hazards. You had glass IV bottles.
Yeah.
They were notorious to break. We had thermometers that weren't digital.
Mercury.
They were with mercury. If they fell on the floor, there was a whole procedure on how to clean that up. And it was dangerous. But on the other hand, you learned a little bit of resilience and you didn't get hurt.
So obviously we can't go back to the past.
Nope.
We can't go and do everything the way the past was, and that's not where we're at. That's not where we're going for. But with the amount of volume of waste we have in healthcare now, there's a lot we can learn from the past.
I think the one thing that we can learn is that when we have to dispose of perfectly clean dressing trays, I'll give for an instance. We could put them in a box and reuse them.
Yeah.
Perhaps take them to a bird sanctuary, perhaps take them to a pet care center where they don't always have the budgets to buy this stuff.
Yeah.
And it can be used. They're all clean.
Yeah.
And they have, like, usually have scissors in them. They have all kinds of things. And they can certainly be used again.
So there are possibilities. We don't have to stay with the status quo right now.
I know. I mean, the hundreds of pounds of waste that go out of a hospital each day, I wouldn't even want to calculate. I bet it's truckfuls.
Well, and that must cost a lot for hospitals and government and taxpayers.
Well, you just look at my pet peeve when nursing was the swabs that they use for the mouth to clean the mouth. And these have been banned since 1968, and we're still buying them. Like, why?
Oh, the little pink ones?
The little pink ones, yes, because people can bite them off.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I see those all the time.
Precisely, and you're not supposed to be seeing them. I did a whole study on that, why you shouldn't see them.
Wow. That's a topic for another video.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Una.
You're welcome.